Okay, this is Braedon Flynn,
Hello.
the most interesting man in Orange County.
Debatable.
The intro is, he's been shooting weddings for 9 years. Named Harper Bazaar's wedding photographer of 2016. Congratulations.
Thank you. One of, not the one of.
Okay. The way they wrote it, they made it seem like you were the.
I didn't want to just, let that slide. Thank you very much, though.
Also loves photographing bands. What bands have you photographed? Anybody we would know?
Yeah. I photograph bands I started a music blog. That's another long story as to how I got into actually doing that, and business mind of learning to, I would figure out bands that were coming into town, and then I would ultimately figure out a publication. I'd say, hey, I'm shooting this band, would you guys like to cover it? And they'd say yes. And so then I'd figure out who ran publication or management for the band. And then I'd say, hey, I'm shooting for this magazine. We'd love to cover your band. Can you set me up with a couple photo passes? And I need to talk to the band after the concert, take their pictures. And so it was my way to get into all my favorite bands for free. So I've shot bands from White Stripes, Arcade Fire. I used to shoot a ton of like the hardcore music scene, which is fun to photograph. Hair, guitars, tattoos. And then, Sufjan Stevens, I can't think of a lot right now, but Cold War Kids, Delta Spirit, Edward Sharpe, and Magnetic Zero. I was trying to think of bands that the hip kids might know.
An entrepreneur at heart. He is always thinking of the next startup.
Sounds very scripted.
It really is. Albany's my producer on this one, so she's the one that comes up with the questions. Creator of the Artist Report and Film Supply. So let's talk about where's the card with the Film Supply Club thingy? I wanted to look at one of these. So talk a little bit about this latest venture for you.
So Film Supply Club is something I created as a way to get photographers film at better prices. And so the model is if you shoot more than about 8 rolls a month, which if you are shooting professionally, you probably are, and if you shoot a lot of film. And so after that, you're just saving a ton of money. And you pay $100 a year, which is like $8 a month. And yeah, so then after that, you're just saving a ton. And so I'm literally not making any money on the film. So I'm basically just a big warehouse for all y'all. And then if you pay $100 a year, then you get access to those prices. There you go.
Why did you start doing it? What gave you the idea?
This would probably go deeper into the question of the burnout topic that we're on, but been trying for a while to create something bigger than myself that is more scalable than myself. I'd say all of you are probably not just starting your companies, but I would say it's difficult to have your brand be your name because it's really hard to scale beyond yourself, but having your brand be your name also creates a brand. So it's twofold. But I have 3 kids, I have a wife, and I travel a lot. And so I feel like I'm at capacity on how much I can charge and how much I'm already traveling. So I'm constantly trying to create something else that can be another source of revenue. And I also love helping. I think one of the things I love the most is helping other people. I've always thought that I should be a rep or an agent, or I don't know what else you'd call those things.
Do you think that comes from your background as a youth pastor?
I think probably my going into being a youth pastor comes from that same background and desire to just I care a lot for people. And I run another organization. I don't know what it's called, organization, but it is called Connecting Things. It's in Orange County. It's a once-a-month speaker series, and it's basically getting people together, all creatives in Orange County, and we now have branches in Denton County, Texas, Colorado Springs, and Louisville, Kentucky. But it's literally it's a free event. It's a once-a-month speaker series, and it's, again, just building up the community. And then I have run the Artist Report, which is what we're videoing these for, and it's a podcast. And again, I have a business background, and so I have a passion for I have so many friends that are talented as artists, but they struggle on the business side of how to actually make a living, and I feel like I have an understanding of that part, and I went to school for business and entrepreneurship, and so I have a real heart for helping people. Sort of the rising tide rises all ships, and so I love this film community, and so a lot of these pieces are pieces of that puzzle.
Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into photography.
So I was big in action sports, and I was a snowboarder, surfer, skater growing up, and I injured myself a lot and got to a point where I basically had to quit snowboarding because I Cohen was, he asked me earlier if he could ask me these questions, but I basically had put myself in a coma. I fractured my face in a bunch of places. I was planning on going to school to snowboard, and my mom said no. So then I got a season pass to our local mountains, which is only snowboard park, and it's really hard packed man-made snow, which means when you fall, you get really hurt. And so then I almost broke my back, and as soon as I recovered from that, I blew my knee skateboarding. And then I was like, okay, I think I should probably stop. So with that, I'm pretty active, and I'm an adrenaline junkie, and I need a lot of stuff going on in my life, if you couldn't tell from all this stuff going on. I don't even remember the question, but
how'd you get started in photography?
Oh,
I know you're leading into it.
So how I got into photography was I going to concerts. I couldn't just go and watch a concert. Like when I was younger, I would go and I'd be in the mosh pits, but I'm not good at just observing, so I want to be part of it. And so I was like, I'm going to be here, so I might as well shoot photos. And I picked up a camera and I started doing that, and then I really liked it. And then I started working myself into concerts, and then I got published. And a lot of it just, for me, I just feel like, of course, I'm gonna do this, and it just sort of made it happen. And I would tell everybody I'm a photographer. And one of my first gigs that I got, I went to school for business. I was already shooting for magazines, but then I went back to photo school through Orange Coast College, which is a local community. It's a bunch of like ex-Brooks teachers or commercial photographers. It's a phenomenal photo department. But with that, I wanted to learn. I think it's one thing to learn how anyone can take a good photo. You can take a good photo with an iPhone. You can just take a good photo, but there's another element to making a photo and actually understanding like what it is to create, like from nothing, from scratch, a photo that's going to be interesting, or how to light. Or I wanted to print in a darkroom, which printing in a darkroom, if you haven't done that, go take a Photo 101 class, even though you're better than a Photo 101. But printing in a darkroom taught me so much about how I actually need to make my image, because when you go through an entire pack of paper, because you did not expose for your highlights and your shadows well, you start to learn how to expose for your highlights and your shadows well. So first gig was I was in one of these photo classes, just learning to shoot 4x5 and learning perspective on the tilt and the shift. And I ended up getting hired by a building, like a property owner that ran, they have a bunch of properties. It was like a 30-story building. So I basically, charged $2,500, still in like taking a class. And I basically got paid. I shot that building probably 20 different mornings or afternoons to get the shot. So then from there, I was like doing a lot of more photo stuff. And
someone told
me
that you went from 6 weddings to 60 in 1 year. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. More than that, actually. So
how did you build the business up, and how did you sustain shooting 60 weddings in a year?
I don't know the answer to all of that, but I did it.
We asked the hard questions here.
Yeah. So a piece of advice that I give to a lot of people is don't quit your day job for a lot of reasons. One, it gives you this leverage point to be able to actually just do the work that you want to do and only create the stuff that's meaningful to you, versus if you just like are so desperate to be a full-time photographer or artist or creative or whatever it is in your field, to be able to do that without being desperate. Because when you put yourself in a place where you have to make money with the gig that you're doing, you now have to take work because you have to make money. Whereas if you have another job and you're just like, oh, I'll only take the gigs that I want to take, and I will charge for them if I feel like it's a job worth charging. If not, I'm just going to do it because I want to do it. Then you're able to build a body of work that is really like, it resonates with your heart. And that's what I was able to do. I was a youth pastor for, I don't know how many years, but I think I was 6 or 7 years full-time. And with that, I was just taking, I was only saying yes to a handful. I avoided weddings for a long time because trying to be a really cool fashion and music photographer, weddings, 10 years ago, was sort of like, oh, that's cute, you shoot weddings. And especially if you wanted to be in that space. And so basically I knew I would love them because I love people, I love parties, I will be the last person at the last after party, mostly every time. And then I'll be up early at the gathering in the morning because I don't want to miss out. But I love that about weddings, and I love adrenaline. And so I feel like I knew I was going to be good at them, but I avoided them. But then I had friends that were getting married that were either designers or stylists, and they had really, I had a decently cool group of friends. And so when they were getting married, it was like a fun fit. And it's like, that's the stuff that they're like, can you shoot our wedding in a way that you're already shooting our brands? And in that, it was like, yeah. And so the first couple weddings that I shot got featured in a few, like it was before, it was sort of like the era when like Once Wed was just coming, it's like there weren't a lot of wedding blogs out yet. And there wasn't the etiquette of like, you only got this feature on one site. So I had one wedding in particular, I think it was the second wedding that I shot. I was already a photographer for a while. So, but it got featured everywhere, and it ended up like Glamour magazine featured it. It was like, so it was one of those where like put me on the map in that sense with like a really cool wedding. So then I was really picky with the stuff that I would take on. I only took on jobs that like seemed cool, and I couldn't travel a lot because I had a job that I needed to be there on the weekend.
What were you doing? What was
Youth pastor.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like I was teaching and being there on Sunday and being with kids. So with that, I was only shooting about like 5 to 6 weddings a year, but it was very like I was only saying yes to the ones that made sense.
Ballpark, how many are you turning down at this point? If you're only shooting 6,
I have no idea. Probably not a lot.
Okay.
I doubt. I don't know if I was getting a ton. I was saying no based on I was just saying like I'm not available, I'm also I don't give pricing in any call. Sorry, in any like first inquiry, because I want to sort of vet the people that this is what I did from the very beginning. I want to vet the people that I'm potentially going to be shooting, because I only have so many weekends that I want to be with these people. And it really like makes a difference for me resonating with the people that I'm shooting and their friends and their party. So with that, it's like I do want to interview them, and I don't want to say like maybe I wasn't available, but I want to be available. Yeah, I forget the question already. Again, I'm just rambling.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay, so we were talking about
the 6 to 60.
Yeah, the 6 to 60.
So sorry, long.
She's paying attention.
Answer. Thank you. You can just keep me on track up here. So I was doing that, and then we had our first kid, and I was sort of like had to make the decision of like I was feeling like I had about 2 full-time jobs, and with that, this is December. I had I think 3 weddings on the books. We were just having our first baby, and decided okay, we're going to stop doing the youth pastor thing, and I'm going to go full-time with photography. And so I was like, okay, well, hopefully I booked some weddings because I've only been shooting about 6. And so then I had a wedding that was in December. It was in the pouring rain it was the first, anyone's ever heard of Rancho Dos Pueblos? Seen weddings there? Really cool venue in Santa Barbara. It was one of the first weddings when they had redone their barn. And it was pouring rain, and the couple embraced the rain. And I got these photos of these like really good looking couple in the rain at this epic location. And that wedding got featured everywhere. And from there, so the first wedding I had booked was the last weekend of April. So I shot 65 weddings between the last weekend of April and December. And at that time, I included engagement shoots in every single package. And I also was shooting bands, and I was also shooting commercial gigs and families that year. I ran at that pace for about 3 years. But that was like I had 4 weddings in one weekend. In that one weekend, 2 of those weddings involved flights in between the weddings. I'm a little crazy, but I really like that.
How long did it take to build the business up? Like, what's the time frame? Was this just like immediate once you decided to make the leap into photography with your wife? It just started this crazy.
That was in December, and then I had that feature in December, and then it just ramped.
Talk about maybe your personal experience with burning out, because I feel like that's a big thing that people don't talk about in the wedding industry, particularly when you make that jump from like 6 to 60.
Totally. And I'm letting you know that I'm speaking from the trenches. I'm not an expert. I'm figuring this stuff out. I have 3 kids. I have a wife, and that like I think if I was single, I would still probably be running at that pace. I'd still be shooting probably 65 weddings. But there's been a bigger shift of having to have balance and recognizing that I need to have balance, even though I think my natural tendency does not have balance. So, and then also this expectation of being really good at everything in my life, and that doesn't work. And so that has led me to feel like an absolute failure in every area of my life. When from the outside, people would look and be like, "Are you crazy? Like, you're crazy successful. You're a great dad. You're a great husband." And but for me, and the pressure that I put on myself was this It's basically, I describe it as an expectation that is so high that it's not. I know it's not attainable, but I'm still pissed at myself for not reaching it. Does that make sense? It's not healthy. It's not healthy. So I've had to learn over these past few years to give myself grace and to be able to like be learning more so to embrace the process. Have any of you heard of Ira Glass? So he runs I would say the most popular radio show in the world. It's called This American Life. And he's amazing at what he does. And he gives this, have any of you heard him talk about the gap? So he gives this talk on the gap. And he's talking to people that want to start something. They're like, he makes radio shows, but he's talking to people like maybe are filmmakers, or they are whatever, want to be a photographer. So he says what happens is like you do your research, you study, you learn your thing, and then you get to this point where you've got to start. It's like your taste. Your taste is great, which is why you want to start this thing. But what happens is once you start, what you produce, it sort of sucks. And he's like, because your taste is good, and you should be doing this, but what you're producing is sort of at this level. And he goes, and this is where most people quit. It's like, and he goes on and he shows a clip of himself 7 years after being in the radio. And he sounded like a total goober, like bad. This is the best guy in the world at what he does. And so he's like, it just takes a volume of work, and eventually that gap closes. He's like, but you just got to be okay with the process, and because your taste is good, you will catch up and that gap will close. But give yourself some grace, and I'm talking to myself right now. Give yourself some grace in that process, because you will you will hate your life, you will hate your job, and you will not be appreciative of the things that you have. And that's where I got, and I'm digging myself out of that hole.
How do photographers navigate being able to provide for their family, pay the bills, but still be in love with what they do?
That is a great question. I think it takes you back to that desperation thing. I can probably come up with some good financial talks for you to listen to. I listen to a ton of audio books, audio podcasts. But as much as you can, keep your overhead low. As much as you can, don't buy above your means. Don't put yourself in debt. Don't buy a house that's bigger than you can afford, because all of those things, it's sort of like leaving the day job to go and try to be full time. All of those things put this major stress of you have to create. If you can get yourself in a position where knowing your numbers, major importance, knowing how much you need, what's your overhead, what's your rent cost each month, what does it cost to run your business, and then you got to pay taxes, all this sort of stuff. If you can figure out those numbers, then okay, so how much do I need to shoot at what price? So once I've got that down, now it's all just gravy, But when you put yourself in a position where that number is I'm again speaking about myself. I live in a very expensive area. My wife wants us to move, but I like where we live. We have 3 kids that in the nice area that we live, we're on the poor side of the nice area. So we have to private school our kids, which is expensive. And so all of it's a major stress. And I would say I shoot a really high-end wedding. I travel the world. I shoot with the best planners in the world. I get to shoot in the celebrity space. I do a lot of really amazing things where at that level you would say oh, wow, you've made it, where having a ton of overhead puts us in this position of feeling like I haven't, because it's still, I can't rest. So that would be it. The best advice would be if you can keep your overhead low and your expenses low, then you have the freedom to do the work that you want to do.
And you mean overhead with everything, not just with your photo business, but also your personal life.
Yeah, major. Because that photo biz is what's supporting the personal life.
Okay, so what steps are you taking now, or have you taken in the past with your life and your business to make sure that you don't burn out and don't suffer from these feelings? Yeah,
so I've been reading a ton of books. I've been doing a lot of reflection on just, what is important. I think if you're trying to find success, I think you need to define what success is to you and really figure out, is it fame? Is it having a lot of followers? Is it having a certain level? Like, as soon as I can book a wedding at this price, is that what you're looking for? Because once you get to a lot of those places, it's like, okay, now you're there. Now what? It's like, once you have 10,000 followers, like all these people have 20,000 followers. When you have, then there's the people with 30,000. Like, none of those things are going to satisfy. So figuring out like what is it going to be okay for you to then be content and enjoy it. Are you asking me though? I'm great at giving advice to other people, horrible at taking it for myself. But this is the stuff that I'm trying to process, is like being content with like, this time of year is always scary because it's sort of like the booking season. Do I have enough? Am I? And I always end up with enough, but it's, why do I allow myself to get so stressed during this time? It's like, it's going to come, you know? So trying to remind myself that, trying to like be present and stop working is majorly important. How many of you are a husband-wife team? How many of you are married? How many? Yeah. So yeah, being able to like turn off work, have like a set time, and then be present and put phones down. Like those things.
How many of you are
important.
answering emails at 9 o'clock at night on your iPhone?
Yeah. Stop it.
That's
Stop
not
it.
good. Stop.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was talking to a client of ours, him and his wife, husband and wife team, and they had a home studio, and it was the same thing you were talking about. They could not turn it off, and it was like affecting them. So they just went and got a studio space down the street, and just the structure of showing up to an office from 9 to 5. And when they got home, it was about them being a couple and being with their kids. It wasn't anything to do with the work. And I think it's really tough sometimes to find that kind of balance.
Yeah. I would say that's really important. The other thing would be basically having done volumes of weddings in a year, and then I don't shoot 60 weddings a year anymore, I promise. But with that, it's also recognizing like none of this matters. This is all dumb. It's really dumb, like all of it. I love what I do, but if that is what you're trying to like find value in, you're gonna be disappointed. You know, so I would say like be happy that you're pretty lucky that you get to take pictures for a living. That's crazy. That's the thing. I have to stop myself and be like, my wife doesn't work. I own a house, like support myself taking pictures. That's crazy. You get to travel the world. That's amazing. So it's that sort of thing. But then also it's like, stop working. And like, what is it that makes you tick? What is it that makes you passionate? And be passionate about that and do that. Do something other than photography, or if it's photography, shoot other stuff than paid gigs.
We know you have a lot of passion projects. Can you talk to us about some of these?
Yeah. Yeah, we talked a little bit about them before, but the artist report is, and then I have the photo report. Those are podcasts. So these are all being recorded, and they're going to end up being on.
Can you get these on iTunes? These podcasts.
The artist report right now is a podcast on iTunes, and that is more so. It's not as many photographers, and then there's the photo report, which you can find from the artist report website. And that is going to be a podcast as well, just geared towards photographers.
Has that one actually started yet?
No.
Okay. When will you start that one?
Probably when I get home from this trip.
Oh, okay. Do you have any interesting photog guests lined up?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's this
Not
whole
to put
series.
You on the spot, but
I have probably 8 videos that I have not done anything with. The guys like Pete Halverson, look him up on Instagram.
He's awesome.
He's phenomenal. Phil Chester and his girlfriend Sarah, both of them, I've interviews with them. They're phenomenal work out of Oregon. And then, yeah, got a lot of people lined up, so it's good.
Anybody have any questions for Braedon? How did you figure out what to outsource and what to do yourself?
Great question. That is a very hard thing to start learning how to do, delegating. But I got to a point of just necessity. Basically, figure out what it is like that you bring to the table that you need to be doing. For me, the things that I know I bring to the table are I need to be the one meeting with clients. I'm good at that. And I need to be out networking and being with people. And then I need to be the one shooting. You know, anything outside of that, I don't need to be touching. I can probably do my accounting, but that is going to take me so long to do, and I'm not going to do it that well. So I do have an accountant that I've hired. And that happened a long time ago, and it was one of the first things just because I knew I needed to hand that off, and I also knew an accountant, so that helped.
it helps to think of what your core competencies are.
Yeah.
Every company has their core, and that's what they do.
If you're just an artist and you have the hardest time like selling or talking to clients, bring on find a partner. If you don't have the money to pay somebody, like find a partner and like give splits. But like bring on someone that's going to balance out your team. So I have an office manager because I am a little scattered and I'm doing a lot of things. And so, and it's more of a project manager for me because I have a lot of different projects. So we're having a conversation like, can we just focus on one of these things? And I said, no, like this is why I brought you on, because all of this has to get done. So you need to help me figure out how to make sure it all gets done. Like outsourcing. This is something I was just talking to the RPL people, guys, girls, about last night, is when I was doing, all of a sudden got to that like 65, 60 weddings a year. Bill and Brian, the owners of Richard Photo Lab, drove down from LA and they said, hey, can we meet with you? Like who are you? And where did you come from? And what are you doing? And so, but they came down almost with concern to be like, you need to, like, this pace is, you're going to die, and I was like, yeah, I got this. But they were, it felt really special to me, I guess, or like it meant a lot that they came down and actually I took their advice to heart. And it's like, I do need to get a team. And the whole deal is like, when you're thinking about like shooting film, it's expensive, but you realize like this is a partnership, and they're basically part of my team, where they are doing a major source of the editing. And if I'm shooting digitally as well, I shoot mostly film, but I have a phase 1 back for my contacts as well. And so I'm doing that. And so, yeah, I can sit there and match my film, but that was something that was really hard for me to delegate initially. But I got to a point again where I was like, I don't want to even touch an image because that is a waste of my time. Even though I can probably do a good job, it just takes me so long and I'm so perfectionistic that's like, I just have to trust. But being able to delegate part of your workflow, I have now you can delegate. There's right here, Smart Side, like some of these people over here for album design. But I have a designer, and she does all my album design. She makes all my packages really pretty. Jenna's friend, Emily, and she makes. I'm a man. I'm a straight man in a women's industry. And I'm geared all towards women, and so I have to make stuff pretty or written pretty, and I don't really want to. I wouldn't do it. That I would tie bows around, and it's not going to look that good. So I have someone who makes stuff really pretty and sends that to my clients, and it's very impressive. But I mean, you can outsource a lot of things, and I would highly recommend outsourcing as much as you can. And I mean, Richard Photo Lab does digital matching,
your core
digital processing.
Your very first core competency as a photographer is to actually go out and shoot photos. Yeah. That's the core competency. Like Braedon said, you might have other strengths that you can use toward the business, but pretty much anytime you don't have the camera in your hands, you're not making any money.
Yeah, and then also it's like that element of like, how do you not burn out? Don't do the stuff that you hate doing. Don't do the stuff that keeps you in front of a computer. Like, if you could delegate that, and then you could actually like think of a project, like a personal project that's actually life-giving, man, that would be amazing.
Okay, so basically, how do you hire a team, and how do you pay them? How do you figure all that stuff out?
Yeah, that's hard. So the thing that I bring to the table, yeah, it is. It's hard. The thing that I feel like I offer is like, I generally say, hey, I don't have a ton to pay, but I am so for my people that her friend Emily, who's worked with me for a while, she's an amazing designer. She's a graphic designer, and the stuff she's doing for me is way under her talent level. Like, but I coach her and I train her on the business side of things. I train her in customer service. For other photographers that have worked for me, I am like office manager was in the planning world, and so great office manager to have. But it's like I come to events. I will introduce. I've actually for people on my team, I was like, hey, listen, I don't want to lose you, but I know someone who's hiring full time that would pay way more than I am, and I would love to I can set you up if you want. So that element of basically trying to educate as well. It's almost like you have access to anything you want from me as part of the team. But then also it's like there's the learning curve. So it's figuring out how much do you need to live on? Is this going to be full-time or part-time? And hopefully you can find someone that doesn't necessarily need a full-time job. And then if it's maybe just like 20 hours a week initially, and like if you can, I also like let people work really, really flexible schedules. I'm really trusting. And so like, if you need to go do something tomorrow, go do something tomorrow. But then take care of me, So in the sense of like, I'm not going to be on you at all times, but like, I will let you be flexible. But if I need something, could you maybe respond to that, So it's giving benefits of like flexibility. You can work from home if you want. You can come in if you want.
So it's finding balance, basically.
Yeah. But then as like their value grows on your team because now they know your systems and they actually are bringing value, then it might be another conversation. It's like, I don't want to lose you because you bring such value to my team. And like the effort to like retrain and do it takes time, So yeah, I think, and then it's also figuring out like how much is that worth for you to give up? And I genuinely would say it's always worth it. It's a really hard thing to say like, man, that's like another $15,000 I'm gonna be paying someone, or $20,000. That's a lot, to think about. But it's like, man, to free that up, the stuff that it takes off your chest, the stuff it takes off your shoulders, to then like be passionate about what you do. It just allows things to grow versus staying stagnant.
Are they random people?
Sometimes random. Most of the time, like I've got Emily actually was like, I had posted on Instagram because I ran out of everyone I asked, like no one could do it. And so then when I post on Instagram, then a friend of a friend said, hey, you should check out, Emily might be a good fit. She's looking for something. And then she was a great fit. So I think it's that, or like throw it on Facebook and say, hey, does anyone know anyone that would be good for this or would be interested in this? And then people come out, like most people want work. And they like the creative space, and so if they can do that, I think that's helpful. Yeah.
How do you find balance having kids, work hours, that sort of thing?
It's difficult. So I've had to, in young kids too, like sometimes don't really understand. I had a studio. Part of it, I had a studio outside of the house for about 7 years, and I was traveling a lot. And when you travel while taking pictures, you're creating work. So then when you get home, you now have work to do because you've been gone and you haven't been doing work. So I would be gone, and then I'd be my office gone, and then I'd work too much. And so I was like, and then both of my office managers at the time had babies at the same exact time, which was absolutely horrible, nasty to me. But so then they both wanted to be working from home, and I don't really meet with clients in my office anymore. I didn't meet with people because they're all from all over the country now, and I don't really shoot in the area that I live, which is silly. But so I was like, okay, maybe if I move back home, then I can be more present, and my wife's not going to be like exhausted and dead by the time I get home for dinner, and she's just fried, and then there's nothing for us, and there, it's like that was the cycle that we were in. It was like I would be working too much, I'd get home, my wife's upset that I'm working too much, and she's burnt out with the kids. So now I'm home, and she's able to like go and do errands, and I'm working. But the challenge with that is now is like the young kids don't really understand that dad's working, and my wife sometimes doesn't understand that dad's working. So it's really difficult on my efficiency, but I'm being okay with that, and I'm stopping work at about 5, and then I'm present, like I'm done, and I'm not on my phone. I try to I only look at Instagram like a couple times a day, and that's very intentional. And then I'm present. I'm there for dinner. I'm there after dinner. I'm helping with bedtime, usually put my wife and kids to bed, and then I go back to work till about midnight or 1. And then I'm up with the kids at 6 so my wife can sleep in a little bit, and then it goes. So it's really intentionality. It's a shift of mindset of like, none of this is important. And this is actually, my family is more important than all of this work. And so it's reminding myself of that constantly and being grateful that I have that. And I want to invest in that. So it's a major mind shift. Is that helpful? Cool. And I'm stuck at it, and I'm trying, and I'm getting better at it.
But you're trying, and that's what
counts.
And
I recognize the struggle, and it needs to change, and it is changing. So I'm just closing the gap, closing the gap.